What started as a routine elk hunt near Mititsa quickly turned into a fight for survival when a charging grizzly bear came within 4 yards of the two men. With only seconds to react, Garrett reached for his gun. The Wyoming wilderness is no stranger to danger. Vast, rugged, and unforgiving, it's home to some of the most powerful predators in North America. For father and son Vince and Garrett Kalkowski, hunting had always been about tradition. Early mornings in the mountains, the crisp autumn air, and the thrill of the chase. But on October 3rd, that tradition nearly turned deadly. Hunting had always been a part of Garrett's life. His father Vince had introduced him to it when he was young, and now, as an adult, they still shared the tradition. That day, they set out with friends more than 20 miles outside of Mititsa, searching for elk. It had been a good day so far. Garrett had already filled his tag, but Vince was still waiting for a shot. Earlier, they had spotted a bull elk on a ridge, but it disappeared before they could get close. Hoping for another chance, they kept climbing. "I've always looked at that ridge from a distance," Vince said. "It just seemed like the kind of place elk would be." When they finally reached the top, Garrett pulled out his phone to record the peaceful scenery. It was a picture-perfect moment, silent, still, untouched. Then, the silence shattered. Somewhere in the trees, branches snapped, quick, sharp, and close. Garrett's instincts kicked in. He reached for his 10mm Glock, chambered and ready. That decision, one he had made earlier in the year after long debates about firearm safety, would be the difference between life and death. "I turned around and just like that, it happened," Garrett recalled. It was a burst of timber snapping and cracking. You could hear something was in the trees. And then, she came. A full-grown grizzly bear, low to the ground, ears pinned back, eyes locked onto them. She was not playing around, Garrett said. She had a mission, and it was to do something to me. I just didn't know what. The bear was only 4 yards away. Garrett didn't hesitate. With only seconds to react, Garrett did the only thing he could. He fired. As soon as I could, I hit my hand on my other hand and just started pulling the trigger as fast as I could, Garrett said. His 10mm Glock roared in the cold mountain air. Round after round slammed into the grizzly, but she kept coming. For Vince, it was a blur. His son, standing firm, firing rapidly, the massive bear barreling forward. Then, just as suddenly as she had appeared, the bear stumbled back into the woods. Silence returned. Vince could barely believe what he had just seen. "I'm still in disbelief that everything went perfectly," he said, "because it had to. If it hadn't, we'd be telling a different story." The father and son stood frozen for a moment, still gripping their guns, listening to the dark forest. When they were sure the bear was gone, they slowly made their way back to their hunting group. Even then, they struggled to comprehend what had just happened. "She looked like she was floating," Vince said. "And I just remember thinking, here it is. I was sure I was about to watch that bear be on top of Garrett." Garrett knew how close he had come to death. "My dad calls me a lot," he said. "We both think about it a lot, and we do the what-ifs. But we can't do the what-ifs. We just have to be grateful it happened the way it did. One decision had made all the difference. The 10mm Glock had been chambered and ready. For years, Garrett had debated whether or not to keep a round in the chamber, worried about safety. But something told him to start doing it. That choice saved his life. "From now on, I will always keep one chambered," he said. "I know now that I had the tools I needed, and I used them correctly." For Vince and Garrett, hunting will always be a tradition. But after facing down a charging grizzly at 4 yards, it will never be the same. Because in the wild, the unexpected can happen in an instant, and sometimes the only thing standing between life and death is a single split-second decision. He barely had time to react. 4 seconds was all it took for the bear to close the distance, tackle him to the ground, and turn what was supposed to be a routine black bear hunt into a desperate fight for survival. It was August 17, 2024, and Tyler and his father, Chris Johnson, were hiking the Resurrection Pass Trail in the Kenai Mountains. The two had never hunted in this area before, but after 2 days without spotting a single black bear, they remained hopeful. They had seen tracks and signs of wildlife, but nothing to shoot. Looking back, Tyler now realizes what he thought were moose tracks may have been something far more dangerous, evidence of a grizzly nearby. Chris took the lead, moving through the narrow passage. Tyler followed close behind. That's when they heard the sound no hunter wants to hear in bear country. It was at that moment the bear announced it was there, Tyler recalled. Only 15 yards away, the grizzly let out a deep, guttural growl, a sound so powerful it made both men freeze. If you've ever heard a brown bear growl, you know it makes you stop doing everything, Tyler said. Even breathing. The bear exploded from the brush, barreling straight toward Chris. Instinctively, Chris turned his back so that the bear would grab his backpack first. But at the last moment, everything changed. The bear suddenly spun around and locked eyes on Tyler instead. "I don't know if it even knew I was there at first," he said. "But suddenly, I was standing between it and the only path out." In 4 seconds, the bear was on top of him. Tyler reached for his gun, a 10mm Springfield XDM Elite, loaded with 15 rounds of full metal jacket bullets. But his thumb slipped. Before he could unholster it, the grizzly slammed into him full force, knocking him to the ground. "It tackled me. My feet were in the air," he said. "My dad couldn't even see me because it completely flattened me." Pinned beneath 600 pounds of furious grizzly, Tyler finally managed to rip the pistol from its holster. With the bear only inches from his face, he did the only thing he could. He started pulling the trigger. Seven shots into the bear's head and chest, but in the chaos, one round went through his own left thigh. But the bear wasn't done. Chris had only seconds to act. As the bear thrashed on top of his son, Chris drew his own 10mm Glock 40 and took aim. He was blasting it, probably hitting it in the rear, Tyler recalled. Finally, the bear rolled off of Tyler, still kicking and snarling. Chris emptied his entire magazine, finishing it with a final shot to the head. "I remember seeing a pissed-off bear," Tyler said. "Then I remember seeing a bear that was dying. The grizzly was dead, but as the adrenaline faded, Tyler realized he was injured. His left thigh had a through-and-through bullet wound from his own gun. His right calf had 2 deep puncture wounds. The bear's teeth had gone straight through his muscle. His right thigh had a deep claw gash, and there was another claw mark on his left shoulder. Despite the blood filling his boot, he didn't feel a thing at first. Then he reached into his pocket for his herbal energy dip, and his hand went straight through the fabric. I pull out the can, and there's a perfect claw mark in it," he said, "and all the dip just funnels out. That's when I realized, ah shit, he got my can." Luckily, the men had prepared for the worst. They carried trauma kits with quick clot and tourniquets, and immediately got to work stopping the bleeding. Chris used his InReach satellite device to call for emergency rescue. Tyler had lost a lot of blood, but he was alive. After an hour and a half, a rescue team airlifted him to the hospital. The lessons that saved his life. Tyler knows exactly why he survived, and his message to other hunters is clear. 1. Always carry a trauma kit. If I didn't have quick clot and a tourniquet, there's a whole bunch of what-ifs. It's not a big kit, and it can save your life. 2. A gun beats bear spray in some situations. Bear spray wouldn't have worked. It was too fast. I would have been spraying myself while getting mauled. 3. Don't hunt alone. If I had been hunting solo, I don't know if I would have made it out. Having a good partner who knows how to use satellite communication, that's essential. What's your opinion? Bear spray or gun? Please share your comments below and stay safe.